You guys, we are officially halfway through the Canadian Premier League season, so thought it would be time to have a conversation around some midway season awards. Gareth, do you have some initial thoughts on this?
I do, because I think that the Canadian Premier League awards have now been established. They're very clear what they're for and how it all works. I like to propose to the people that are in charge of the Canadian Premier League potentially 2 more awards. Ooh. Obviously, they wouldn't come to play this season. It's a little bit too late for that, but maybe next year or future years with the expansion on the horizon, I think they'd add something to the equation. So this is what I'm thinking, guys. We need a Newcomer of the Year award. Just a new player to the CPL who's been
made an impact.
I think it's great. Shrug from Oliver Platt. Okay, that's fine. I just think it would be a decent enough award. The second one is Midfielder of the Year award. We're so disrespectful to midfielders. Like, the Golden Boot clearly goes to an attacking player, a forward. It rewards them for their goal scoring prowess. A Defender of the Year, we get that as well. Why not a Midfielder of the Year? Just a hardworking two-way player that connects the team and makes them better. So I like to add those two. Just put them in the suggestion box.
Right.
Let's see what happens.
We're going off script here, you guys.
I just think we need to make a bigger deal with the Team of the Year. Like, that is like first team all-star. You know, it's a big thing in other leagues, and we should make more emphasis on that. And then you give the midfielders the credit they deserve, right? That seems to be a bit of an afterthought right now.
That's fair as well. I mean, Newcomer of the Year, also a good shout. Suggestion box is full. Thanks to Wheels. No problem. You guys, we are sticking with
Reporter of the Year, One Soccer Reporter.
I thought you were going to go there.
Okay, let's talk about the already established awards that we see year to year, beginning with Manager of the Year. Ollie, any thoughts? I feel like, let me just preface by saying this conversation is going to be largely a debate. Probably many names will come up in each category, but let's just, spark the conversation. Ollie, Manager of the Year.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's going to depend on what Forge and Cavalry do in the second half of the season. Obviously, if one of them keeps up this pace, that manager is going to be the Coach of the Year. I think if they kind of, even if one of them obviously is going to win the CPL Shield, if there's a little bit of a slowing of the pace, I think that's where Martin Nash starts to come in. And I think you have to give him real consideration already because of just the extent of the turnarounds here. And obviously, they've got to maintain this as well. But compared to 15 games last season, they're 15 points better off. They had 1 win at this stage last season. And now they're third in the CPL with 7 victories. Like, that's a dramatic turnaround over the course of 12 months. I think they've got a lot right. Young players who have been coming along and have been coached well. Players they brought in who weren't household names like Moridona, Pachile, Amisi, you know, who have been instant hits pretty much for this VFC side. So I think Martin Nash should absolutely be in this race. And it's just a question of, like, does Bobby Smyrniotis or Tommy Woodon Jr. have like a record-breaking year that it's impossible to ignore? And if not, then I think Nash is very much a runner here.
Yeah. How about Dasso as the assistant coach of the year? No, in fairness, like, this is the thing with the head coach of the year award. It's like every year, do you give it to the manager who takes the biggest jump with his team, maybe the surprise outfit, or do you give it to the head coach that has shown sustained excellence and potentially an historic run again, like Bobby Smyrniotis has? It was a joke for the first how many ever years in this league, Smyrniotis not winning the award, because he always found reasons to give it to someone else. I will say it'll be very difficult to give it to anyone other than Bobby Smyrniotis if Smyrniotis doesn't lose a game to Martin Nash over the course of the season. And that's what we've seen thus far. Like, when those two managers have played one another, Forge has won. So how can you give it to a manager that doesn't have a win against the other one? So that is dangling the carrot. Vancouver FC and Forge FC this week. So go out and get that win over Bobby Smyrniotis, and maybe you can be included in that equation. Yeah, it should have, but they didn't. And look, Forge is on an historic run to start the season, so it's hard for me not to give it to Bobby Smyrniotis.
Yeah, fair. Honestly, I was shell-shocked when I saw that graphic that Vancouver had already surpassed their entirety of the points they captured in 2025.
Both worthy candidates.
Both worthy candidates. And we get to see them match up tomorrow. Yeah. Let's move on to let's go to Golden Glove, actually. Wheels, who comes to mind?
I know that Berteau is the guy that probably is top of the mind for most people. Dimitri Berteau could be best newcomer of the season, the Canadian Premier League as well. No, he's been great. He looks the part. He plays the part. He is the real deal. With that being said, Forge doesn't give up many chances, like at all. And that's the only counter argument is there's probably more busy goalkeepers in the Canadian Premier League who are forced to have bigger interventions on a week-to-week basis. And it's hard to knock a player like Nate Ingham at this point. Nate Ingham has to be part of the equation. Cavalry are a much more open team defensively than Forge. Forge have sat back a lot, given away possession, and just being superiorly organized over the course of the season. Ingham's come up with a good number of saves. I believe he has the second most saves in the Canadian Premier League already. So for me, it's a two-horse race between those two gentlemen thus far. Callum Irving and some others maybe lurking in the midst as well, but I think it's a two-horse race where we stand.
Yeah, I will give Marco Carducci some credit, who I think has done well with Halifax and in a team that has given up quite a few chances at times. But I think it's going to be down to the top two teams and the top two goalkeepers on those teams. I thought Nathan Ingham should have won last year, to be honest. As good as Kalele was, I thought Ingham was very hard done by there. He's going to be, that doesn't mean that he should get it as some kind of consolation this year, but I think he's going to be right there with Bateau as well. I do think there's a bit of like some of these awards that they're about narrative and they're about kind of, the story people like to tell. And I think Bateau's come into the league and has been recognized very quickly as a very good goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. So he's got kind of, I feel like, a bit of momentum behind him. He was great in the Champions Cup to start the year as well. But I think Ingham, in terms of actual performances in the CPL season, Ingham's been right there with him step for step so far.
Yep, he settled into Calgary quite well. Let's talk about the players who are in front of the goalkeepers. Defender of the year, Ollie, who do you think?
Well, there's a formula for this one. Every year it's been a centre-back on the team who conceded the fewest goals. So if we're going with that again, then obviously
according
that
to my
leaves four
calculations.
Players, yeah, who are kind of the front runners. I think Antoine Baptiste is probably in pole position right now. I think he's been very good, another newcomer contender for Wheels. And he scored some important goals as well, which helps, right? I think he's got 3 on the season, and not that they count, but a couple more in the Can Champ as well, for the purposes of this award at least. So I think it will probably go that direction again. And because Klomp has won twice and Nimick has won last year, I think maybe Batiste and Didic, again, when you talk about a bit of narrative, having not won it before, being a new player in the league, in Batiste's case, they might be the two to keep your eye on, I think.
Yeah, Dan Nimick is going to lead the way for me, but I want to give a shout out to Campagna with Vancouver FC. He's been excellent. Don't sleep on him. He's one of the best players in the Canadian Premier League. And I think if Vancouver continue on their ascendancy, the run that they're on, then he should find himself right in the mix. He's been that good this year. But yeah, Nimick, Batiste, Campagna, those guys would all be involved in my top 3.
Okay.
Can we just give a shout out to the fullbacks as well? They never seem to really be in contention for this awards, but like Maury Dona's had a great year for Vancouver.
Somehow Rama found himself as a finalist last year. I don't know how that happened, but
let's add midfielder of the year, fullback of the year, center back of the year,
fullback of the year, team of the year.
Yeah, I'm fine with Maury Dona. I'm fine with Maury Donor being involved. There's been a lot of like good defenders. I think Jefferson Alphonse is really good. Chrétien with Supra's been really good. So there's a number of strong performances by defenders across the CPL this year. But the center backs, just the way that they command space and attention, just their profiles are more suited towards what people look for when you're naming the winner for this award.
Wheels, do you think it's actually going to be determined by what Ollie mentioned in that formula? Like, do these guys you mentioned have a chance, knowing that maybe the numbers don't necessarily back them up?
Generally, I mean, Maury Donor has more crosses than any other player in the CPL thus far. But Dan Nimick not only defends well, but he passes well, pops up with a goal, especially from the penalty spot as well. When I'm looking at these things, I'm looking at not just the way that the team plays. I'm looking at individual stats, passing accuracy, long ball play, overall leadership on the field. There's a lot of things that come into the equation, but generally those best defensive teams have had the best defensive players. So it kind of follows suit naturally.
If it's not one of those 4 centre backs for Forge or Cavalry, I'd be pretty shocked, to be honest. Yeah. And that's not to say there's not other contenders, but that's the way it tends to go. Just want to point
out some other good, like Campagna's been excellent this year. So,
yeah. Okay. VFC, the Eagles, flying. Okay, Wheels, let's move on to U21 Player of the Year. This will probably be an extension of our conversation earlier with the U20 CONCACAF Championship. But yeah, thoughts there?
There's no better under 21 player in the Canadian Premier League than Sergei Kozlovsky. There just isn't. I know he's missed a couple games now, going away on international duty, but he's a miss when he's not there for Atletico Ottawa. He's the best young player in the CPL for my money, so I'll just stick with Kozlovsky.
Wow, that was the most concise Gareth's ever been.
He's got to be up there. He's right. Fotzing, before he went away with the U20s, was playing very, very well for Vancouver. Starting to become difference maker type player who wouldn't be in the league for very long. So if that continues, then he's going to be in with a shout as well. And I think you have to give a shout to players who, again, you don't want to just be focused on the top teams, but they are the best teams in the CPL by a distance for a reason. And if Adam Perlman and Jose Masunda can start every week for those teams, then I think they have to be in the conversation too. So I'd point those two out. And maybe outsiders, Kian Proctor, Biello, both players, young players who have had good years playing regularly for good teams as well.
Okay. And finally, to wrap up this segment, you guys, let's zoom out and go mid-season Player of the Year. Ollie.
This is tough, and
this is hard.
There's a lot of contenders right now. I think it's a pretty open field. If you were voting now, I don't know if he'd win it, but I think a player who you don't know where his team would be without him is Isaiah Johnston, who's kind of put Halifax on his back to a certain extent this season. I think Sean Rea would be up there. Again, though, I kind of look at when we're talking about playing for CPL Shields and playoff spots down the line, are the big players going to kind of come to the fore? And if that's the case, I think Tobias Washevsky has had a very solid first half of the season. And if he steps it up a little bit in the second half, I think it could be his. He's one to me who still stands out as, for my money, probably the best player in the CPL. So I think I might have him as my favorite at this stage, but he probably needs to a little bit more down the stretch, which we know he can deliver to get there.
Interesting. I'll name a player from each one of the top 5 teams, because I think that each of the top 5 teams have a standout player who could very well find themselves in the mix, depending on where they finish. And we'll start at the top. I think Forge's best player this year has been Tristan Borges.
Yeah, I agree.
It's weird. Tristan goes from having good year, down year, outstanding year, down year. It's a little bit like a yo-yo. But this year he's been the most creative player, the most important player on that Forge team for me. So shout out to Tristan. I think that right now he would probably be my odds-on favorite based upon how good Forge have been. For Cavalry, it's Tobias Warshevsky, 11 combined goals and assists. That's most in that category in the Canadian Premier League, continues to lead the way. And on his day, he's still unplayable. When Warshevsky's on, it's very difficult to deal with a player like him. So Toby for me there. In our nation's capital, where would Atletico Ottawa be without Balou Tabla right now? Yep. Just in terms of his production, his overall play, it started off slow, but he's really ignited. He was kind of propelled by that performance against Toronto FC in the Canadian Championship, but he hasn't skipped a beat since that time. Ollie mentioned Sean Rea. I mean, for the first quarter of the season, I don't think there was a better player in the Canadian Premier League. Maybe he's come back to the field, or maybe the field is caught up to him. I'm not sure which way you want to look at that, but that's part of the equation. And I think for Vancouver FC, their best player has been Mo Amisi. He's been dynamite. The goals have now started to come earlier in the season. He couldn't finish his breakfast, lunch, or dinner, but now it's all come together. But it doesn't mean he wasn't playing some really good football and be really effective. He's a buzzsaw. He's a handful to deal with. So those would be my 5 candidates I'd put forward as the best player from those respective teams. If you want to go down to Halifax and share with Johnston as well, then I have no problem with that. But let's call it the Wheeler 6-pack.
Oh my God.
I think that's the position we're in, though, is there's a bunch of candidates who have had strong first half of the seasons, and who's going to take it now, right? It's going to be decided in the second half, not the first.
Yeah, well, we will see how the second
Wheeler
half
6-pack
unfolds. No, we're not making that a thing. Okay, it all begins tomorrow when we see Vancouver and Forge take on each other in Hamilton with the 2 managers who are at the forefront of the Manager of the Year conversation in Martin Nash and Bobby Smirniotis. Watch it all go down on One Soccer.